a key manifesto promise has been the scrapping of some taxes, key amongst them being the e-levy. We've had the COVID levy as well, emissions tax, betting tax, and all of that. Many have said that we are in the middle of an IMF program. We need revenue, and that scrapping those taxes now will deny the state or the government of money to implement the ambitious policies or programs they put before the people of Ghana that made it secure the huge mandate it did. What are your thoughts generally about the government's pledge? And we saw Atuforsen emphatically repeating same at the vetting committee that he is going to champion the scrapping of those taxes. What should be the approach? You think the taxes should be scrapped as he has said, or you think it should hasten slowly? If it will be scrapped, what should be the approach? He talks about increasing compliance, but what's your view on all of that?
I mean, first of all, as taxes, of course, they have the same seemingly equal legal and economic status. But taxes, the thing to impose the tax is driven by various rationale. So the fact that they are a source of revenue, while that's an element of it, does not explain why the taxes are imposed. So I think there are different reasons for the different taxes. And looking at them as a revenue source is one of the ways to look at it. So we can break them down. E-levy attracted a lot of public anger, and people felt that it's an indirect tax, and it's largely going to be paid by people who use Momo a lot, which likely is going to be lower income people who don't have bank accounts and therefore do a lot of transactions with Momo. So it's an example of a tax which may bring revenue to the government, but in terms of its equity, can be described as a regressive tax. Because we have a situation where alongside this, for example, in the late Mahama period, the government reformed the royalty regime for mining companies, which has ended up losing the country quite a bit of revenue. In a moment where gold prices are at an all-time high now, that measure, basically has been a measure which has privileged the rich. We criticized this when it was done. So I'm making the point that not all taxes are the same. So the e-levy, in terms of its social impact, who pays? There's a case to be made for its scrapping. The COVID levy, COVID is long gone, so really there's no reason to maintain that. Now the emissions tax, the law we set up that they talked about it's a tax on carbon dioxide emissions and trying to raise money to promote a green economy. Now, in the period of climate change and global warming, governments need to take measures to try to promote a green economy. There are questions to be asked about whether the mechanism for the effective administration of that tax exists, and so on and so forth. So what I'm arguing here is that if you look at each of those taxes, they are different in their character and their purpose and their effects, socioeconomic effects. So the emissions tax, I will not add to, because you can't describe it as a nuisance tax in this period. The betting, the tax on betting. Betting has become very pervasive because young people don't have work, and a lot of time is being spent by young people betting. In other countries, taxes on betting have been used to discourage betting because betting is addictive and also is socially disruptive. So if you say removing the levy on betting, it's basically a statement that you are okay with betting. So what appears to be a tax measure actually is a major socioeconomic statement by the government. All of them are grouped together as taxes. But what I'm trying to show here is that you can't simply group them as taxes and say they are sources of revenue or, and so on and so forth. I mean, the need to diversify the sources of taxation so that they are more equitable, they are more progressive and less retrograde and less burdensome. We have got a heavy presence of indirect taxes in our tax portfolio, which basically consumption taxes, which burden poorer people, and they are regressive. So there's a bigger question about if the NDC really has its claim to be social democratic. A social democratic government should be looking at reform of fiscal and tax regimes which actually are equitable, and that goes beyond simply what you do with one or two levies and taxes.
Great. Talking about betting taxes, you said it's to discourage the betting because it could be addictive, etc. And so that is a socioeconomic statement from the NDC. What will be the alternative if these are to be scrapped? For example, ISE, the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, says that in all, these taxes bring in some 5 billion cedis, and it says that scrapping this should be nuanced in a way that will balance public relief with fiscal discipline. What should be the approach? The finance minister appears to be saying that in his first budget, he is going to fulfill this manifesto promise. Now, elections have been won. Of course, we see a lot of things before winning elections. What should be the approach? You think it should be nuanced, as ISA is suggesting, to balance the public relief with fiscal discipline, or he should just go ahead and deal with it as he has promised, or they promised in the manifesto?
I mean, if they take a decision to, I think the e-levy is definitely the biggest source of in that 5 billion that is talking about.
It's actually COVID levy that brings in brought in 3.17
the COVID
billion.
levy, I think really there's no justification for a COVID levy in 2025. Absolutely none. And there are taxes that, historically governments have imposed, which have been abolished, and they have to find other ways, of levying, We've had malaria for a long time. We don't have a malaria tax in this country.
I see.